Ruben, obviously disappointing to come away with nothing, even more so given all those good chances that you had today as well.
Yes, I think it was the difference of the game. They score, we didn't score. We had opportunities to score. Then in the first half we push a little bit harder. We had the situations. We suffered some transitions because we were trying to get the results, but in the end they score. We didn't.
We know all about the issues you've had this week with injuries and illness and what that's done to your squad. How difficult was it to prepare for today, given all of that?
It doesn't matter. It's in the past. Now we want to recover the players. I think we can recover some players for the next game. And from this moment until the end of the season is going to be like that. So we have to be together to finish the season and then start over.
Apart from Lindelof, all the players on your bench were teenagers who'd never played for the club before. Have you ever had a situation like that before?
In the former club, I had it, but it is completely different because this is the hardest competition in the world, and they are playing in one competition that is not too strong. So I'm trying to be careful with them, and also I felt the team was pushing for the goal, and I don't want to change, but they will play. So they have to be ready.
Yeah, so were you tempted to use any of the players? I know you made a late substitution, but earlier on, were you thinking about bringing any of them on?
Yes, of course. You try to read the game, you try to understand what you see in trainings. But again, I felt that the team was trying to get a goal. We were pushing for that, and I didn't feel the need to change.
And I know that you said before this game that both managers are under a bit of pressure, but you feel under bigger pressure because you're at the bigger club. Does this add to the pressure, or do you think the circumstances, given the players you're without, means that people can see that?
No, I'm not worried again. Of course, I understand our fans and what people and media think about it. I just want to finish the league strong. I'm not worried about me. I'm worried about the club. I'm worried about the team, the players. So for me, it's the same. I just hate to lose. That feeling is the worst thing. The rest, I'm not worried about. I just want to help my players, to help these young kids in this moment and to win some games.
So you're not feeling the pressure because you understand and trust the process and you're looking towards the future?
I'm just focused on helping my players. I understand my situation. I understand my job. So I'm never worried about that. I'm really confident on my work. And I just want to win games. I'm more concerned about the club, the situation that we are in, the place in the table. That is my worry. I'm not slightly...
In terms of Champions League qualification, and it's just starting to level out a little bit at the bottom. We'll come to all those kind of conversations. But we need to talk about two teams that are in no danger of relegation, no danger really of qualifying for the Champions League next season, unless it's through the Europa League, where they could potentially meet in the final. Leanne Sanderson is here. Darren Lewis is here to go through this. And Benty, it's going to be really interesting to see what happens with Spurs and Man United. They could still have a successful season if they win the Europa League. But in terms of the game itself, we saw laid bare on the pitch all the problems that they've been suffering.
Yeah, agreed. I thought obviously Spurs won the game. They were the better of two really poor sides. I thought the quality of the game wasn't great. I had slight sympathy, and we'll probably get to that, for Ruben Amorim, because you can't have those clear-cut chances and not take them. I think that was a deciding factor in the game as well. But when you just look at what Ange had to work with, and he has been saying it about when players come back, we will look better. I thought they looked marginally better, slightly better. But still, I mean, the two seasons that these two clubs are having is very, very poor. I thought they'd look better. I thought Ruben Amorim would be more out of his team than he has done. He hasn't. But for Ange, I mean, as I said, getting the result yesterday is a big plus. But still, if you're looking from both sets of supporters at both sides, really, really poor performances. And
we'll come on to Manchester United in more detail, because I imagine, Leanne, you've got plenty to
Steam
say
coming out of my ears
about where we are just now. We're just going to pull that wire back for a minute before letting you go in a few minutes. But look, in terms of Spurs and their performance, as Darren said, Ange Postecoglou has been telling us, when we get our players back, we will look a lot better. They did have James Maddison back, and they had Vicario back in goal, which made a big difference for them. So what do you think in terms of Spurs and improved performances? Has Ange been proven a little bit right?
I don't think so, if I'm being totally honest. I think most of the season they have had a lot of injuries, Van der Ven, Vicario, and I think, the list could go on. Maddison, even when he wasn't injured, wasn't starting games, which I couldn't get my head around. And I think a lot of the times when Ange Postecoglou speaks, I think a lot of the times he makes a lot of excuses. He's come out and he's spoken about Timo Werner before, saying he's not at the races. And I think when you start doing stuff like that and then losing to teams like Ipswich and Leicester, and I know the fans are getting quite frustrated in those moments. And I think when you look at the game yesterday, if Tottenham Hotspur, they should be beating Manchester United way more than that. Going into that game, one team in 14th, one team in 15th. This is Man United and Tottenham. It's crazy if you think about this 2 years ago. These are two teams that'll be pushing for the Europa League and Champions League. So I think, fair play to Maddison yesterday, getting on the score sheet. But I do think, Tottenham, they still have players. Like they've had Kulusevski, they've had Son, they've had Saar, Basuma. They've still had players at their disposal. I know there's a lot of talk about the young players. Archie Gray was on the bench yesterday, but he's been brilliant. What a player he is, and he's been playing out of position as well. So sometimes I think managers have to manage what's in front of them, and that's what Ange Postecoglou has been doing, and it's been pretty inconsistent.
It has been inconsistent from Spurs. There were protests before and after the game about the ownership. The suggestion from the fans is that while things might be going right in a business sense for Tottenham, they're not seeing that on the pitch. And even though there has been investment, a lot of investment in the squad, that it's not the right kind of investment, that they aren't backing that up. So the question is, are the problems deeper for Tottenham than what we're just seeing on the pitch at the moment?
I'd say yes. I think the fans have been fairly consistent about the ownership model and about the fact that they spend at the wrong time and don't spend when they've got the opportunities to really push on. I remember being on the plane back from the Champions League final, and the buzz among us journalists was that they were bidding for Bruno Fernandes at the time, who would have been a terrific player to bring in, really push on after they'd lost the Champions League final to Liverpool. And yet they were outbid by Manchester United at a time when a signing like Fernandes would have really signalled a move towards a rejuvenated Tottenham Hotspur. I remember around about that time, Christian Eriksen was talking about not wanting to play for the club anymore. Now, at the minute he says that, he's got to go. You've got to have players who are committed to your football club. But instead he stayed because they couldn't get what they wanted for him. And it kind of sums up the culture of the club. And what would happen subsequently, as we all know, is that Antonio Conte would call them out and suggest there's something wrong with the DNA. And I think the two are kind of combined. There's something wrong with the mentality at the club, but there's definitely something wrong with a model that doesn't invest, like Liverpool do, in decisive moments, bring in a goalkeeper when they need one, bring in a high-class centre-half when they need one, bring in top talents around the pitch when they need to do it. And if you look at the top of the Premier League, that's the reason why they're running away with it. Arsenal are second because they've started to do that now. Obviously, they haven't got the striker they want, but essentially the teams that are doing best are the teams where the ownership models are really decisive about bringing in the requirements for the team when they need them.
My only thing with that is, and I totally agree with what you're saying, is that time under Pochettino, that was the time to go again, I think, to take them to the next level. I think the difficulty that Spurs will find now, and certainly moving forward, is that when the top players now become available, they're not going to be they could be in the market for them, but they're not going to get them. Like Bruno Fernandes was never ever going to choose, regardless where Spurs were at that time, Tottenham Hotspur over Manchester United.
But that's part of the reason why the fans are protesting, because Tottenham had the finance. Let's not kid ourselves. They've got a huge pot. And actually, a lot of people target the Tottenham chairman, Daniel Levy, but actually it's Joe Lewis who runs the club, and he's the one who's got the purse.
Well, he's not involved in the company at the moment, but he was. Joe Lewis was the owner of ENIC.
Yes. And I think as far as Tottenham are concerned, had they established themselves as a club that were prepared to meet that level of finance, then it could have been possible that top-class players would have seen them as an opportunity. And even if you think about Fernandes, Man United hadn't come into the picture at that point, so there wasn't an alternative for him at that point. Just like the year before Jack Grealish went to to Manchester City. Spurs had a free run at him, but didn't want to pay the £30 million it would have cost to sign him. So they have had opportunities to bring in big players. They've had opportunities to keep big players. Kyle Walker, for example, they wanted him to leave. So he went to Manchester City and won a number of titles.
They have signed good players, though. Let's be honest, they have, haven't they?
It's the decisiveness of the recruitment policy. You can sign good players in isolation, but I think
Mickey van der Ven being a great
Bukario.
Exactly. You can sign good players in isolation, but if you want to build a team, it's got to be consistent. It's got to be when the manager needs it, and it's got to be to reinvigorate a team when it needs it, which is what we're seeing with Manchester City right now.
When Ange Postecoglou came in last season, though, everybody was saying Tottenham were going to win the league. Literally, they were playing this like free-flowing football. Everybody was excited, and where has that gone? And I think with Ange Postecoglou, I think he's quite stubborn in his tactics. And I'm not saying you need to be on the sideline like Mikel Arteta running up and down, but you can see like there's not much kind of organisation when he's on the sideline. When things are happening in the game, he's not making things happen. See, when Ruben Amorim's on the sideline or Mikel Arteta, they're tactically changing things. I think Ange Postecoglou is quite stubborn in the way he approaches games. And there was times this season I thought he would come under scrutiny for his job because some of the performances and the displays haven't been good enough.
I mean, that is a good point in so much as both managers, Amorim and Postecoglou, they're philosophy managers. They want to stick to their principles. They believe that if they move away from those principles, then that's some kind of heresy. Exactly, it makes them look weak.
Amorim's been sort of couching that a little bit this week by saying, well, I'm a Portuguese manager and Portuguese managers are very adaptable. So although I have a system and I believe that that's the best way to help a team to improve because they have a clear message, I can adapt within that. So Amorim, we'll come to whether or not that you all agree with that in just a second. But I want to pick up with Leanne and with Darren about a point you made about culture at clubs, and that's one that's particularly been levelled at Spurs for a number of years and is starting to be levelled at Manchester United, I think, at the moment. And having been at Spurs, there's a suggestion that it isn't that that winning at all costs mentality in terms of the football. It's a top four. It's getting near
higher than
enough.
Arsenal.
It's an improving. It's a beating Arsenal. It's a style of play kind of mentality that maybe there isn't that same edge that you would get at a club that has that sharpness about it. You'll be able to speak more to the inside.
Yeah, I understand. I mean, I was lucky enough, fortunate enough to be able to nick a trophy while I was there somehow. I'll get that one in.
Yeah, but just like to point out, I did win it.
But I mean, listen, I was an unused sub, but it still counts. But no, I think clubs that regularly win things. I think it's easy to kind of like instill that kind of culture. Now, certainly when I was at the football club at Spurs, they had some, top quality players, but I almost felt like these players were almost using it as a stepping stone to get to the club with that type of culture. You look at Berbatov going to United because their DNA. Robbie Keane at the time, he went. Gareth Bale, Luka Modric, these guys. I never really felt like these guys looked at Spurs, OK, I'm going to be here for the next 10 years to go on and try and establish this club to win Premier Leagues, to win Champions Leagues. And I think the club at times were too easy to get these players and go, right, how much can we get for these players and move them on? It would have been nice to have seen it at one point, maybe, and Daniel Levy, I think, did try it briefly to go, no, let's try and keep this team together and see where this team could go. Because if you keep the likes of Berbatov, Bale, I know it's going to be difficult when you've got the likes of Real Madrid, Manchester United. If you keep them together for a couple of seasons and they're all playing at that top level, then I've got no doubt Spurs would have certainly won something in that period. But it's almost like Gareth Bale got to the top of the mountain, but get him off. Luka Modric got to the top, get him out. Berba. There was never a set where all these...
They wanted to go. So there's an issue between like the club saying, we don't want to pay the extra that is required to have this player at the top of their game. But equally, there's the players wanting to go.
But you know what? I get that.
And that goes back to the culture you're talking about.
I get that, and that's 100% right, Kel. But if Gareth Bale had been there and Berbatov was still there at the top, Modric had stayed there, Kane Winnie, all these different players had come at that time, then all of a sudden they might go, well, I'd like to get to Madrid, but let me just stay around here for a little bit because we look like we're on the cusp of doing something. But I just felt the moment these guys got to their maximum worth, move them on.
Harry Kane's very interesting in that because it felt like he did do that a number of times and kind of reached a point where that sort of snapped for him and he was like, no, I need to leave in order to win trophies. And increasingly that's a kind of accusation that's being levelled at Manchester United that maybe the culture within the club is not where it should be, that there are players who need to go. It's already started on this, Ruben Amorim, that kind of, Marcus Rashford has gone, looks Anthony's on his way out. That there are players who who need to go before they can start again.
Yeah, and I think Ruben Amorim is pretty obvious. He wanted to come in the summer. He didn't want to come yet. But I think, for me, he is the right person for the job. I like the way he's managed all of the situations, with the Rashford situation, Garnacho, when he left them out of the Manchester derby, and then look what happened. Garnacho kind of pushed on from that. It's not easy when you're left out of a squad. But I think, I said it as soon as Ruben Amorim took over, I said there's still about 70% of these players that are not good enough to play for Manchester United. And that's the reality. Individually, they are not. Anthony now's gone over to Real Betis, and there's this feeling that when players leave Manchester United, they seem to excel in other places. But I think that runs its course in the end, because Ruben Amorim, Anthony was still part of his squad up until the weekend before he left. So he still wanted to play him. Casemiro played yesterday. But for me, the thing that typifies where Manchester United are at right now, 8 of the 9 subs yesterday hadn't played a minute for Manchester United. Lindelof was the only player that had. That was on the subs bench. And those were the players at Ruben Amorim's disposal. Now, I like the fact there's young players coming through, but Casemiro hadn't played a game since December. He hasn't played, and he's having to start.
And there were a few injuries in the squad.
But you look at the 11 that was out there, I'm surprised Tottenham should be really turning us over by way more than that, because Bruno Fernandes is really the only player that I think is at that elite level. And again, I thought Onana was at fault for the goal. I really do. I don't think you parry the ball out into Maddison's path. So there's a lot of problems at Man United, and I think Ruben is the right person for the job, but I think it's going to take a long time for him to be able to implement what he's trying to do. Going back to the game plan, should I come up for air yet?
No,
going back to the game plan, you know what I'm like with Man United. Going back to the game plan you were talking about, about him being stubborn in what he's trying to do. I think it comes to a point, Ahmad's now out injured, Agate's out, Kobbie Mainoo, who wasn't really playing under Ruben anyway. You have to be adaptable, because if it's a definition of insanity, isn't it? Expecting and repeating the same things, different results, it's not going to happen. So I think this time next year, if Ruben Amorim is in the same position, then people will start asking questions, because when Ruben Van Nistelrooy took over in those 5 games, I know it was only 5 games, and I'm not saying Ruben Van Nistelrooy should have kept the job. Look what happened. There was a tune out of the players. What I'm seeing now, I don't see progress. I'm not seeing progress, but I don't think that's down to the manager. I think it's down to the lack of quality in the team. Look at Garnacho yesterday. I love Garnacho, right? In front of the goal, 7 yards out, leans back over the bar. Now, I've missed sitters. We all have. Maybe you haven't, Bentley, but I have. It happens. But those are the standards that are required at Manchester United. Man United, Xerxes and Højlund starting. Come on, guys. This is Manchester United.
But as we've said, that there's not... I mean, they may well be good squad players for Manchester United, but they didn't have a squad yesterday.
No. And but 70 mil for Højlund. Man United are paying all this money for these players that nobody else was even going.
I think you're right. I think it's a perfect storm at Man United, because recruitment's been poor at Man United for quite some time. I've been on here making a point before. For example, Højlund, if you look at the money spent on him, he should have been at a mid-ranking side before he went to Manchester United. He was not a Manchester United striker by any stretch of the imagination. I go back, you mentioned Robbie Keane.
He was a promising talent.
He was a promising talent. I remember when Robbie Keane was scoring goals for Wolves, and Wolves wanted £6 million for him, and Sir Alex said, I'll give you £600,000 and put him in the reserves. And he was scoring goals for fun at the time. He's an exceptional talent. Højlund justify that level of expenditure, but there have been so many players that United have brought in at that level, Anthony being one of them.
Mason Mount
was another. I mean, there are so many players that were good, but not great players, and a club the size of Manchester United should command the very best. I'm a little bit uneasy about Amorim, because I've been on here, I was shouting from the rooftops about him when he arrived. He's a fantastic communicator. But I agree with Leanne, you have to be adaptable. And I look at the way he wants to play, and it is the definition of insanity. He just wants to shoehorn players into a system which has left them utterly beatable at Old Trafford. I think it's 6 defeats in the last 7. And away from home, they're not much better either. So it's very easy to say, let's look at him in a year's time. But I look at this season, if I'm Wolves, I'm targeting Manchester United, because they don't look to me... there are lots of big teams that are in and around it and you think they're too good to go. They're not. They're really not. If they continue on this downward trajectory, where are they going to get the wins from? Even when they played Leicester...
So Manchester United have lost 12 games of their 25 this season. The last time they lost more than that, which was 13 of their opening 25 games, was 1973-74, and that was the last time they were relegated from the top flight. So it is that, and look, Amorim's only.
Well, you were going to give me hope, Kel, but
no, but Amorim's well, the more slight hope part is that Amorim's only been in charge of 14 of those, so it's not. He's not been responsible for all of them.
We're not on the way in. I was looking at some of the clubs around Europe that have sacked managers after a short period of time. Ramos, for example, lasted 6 games at Real Madrid. Camacho probably lasted 6 months. Rafa Benitez, 6 months. Inter Milan sacked Lopetegui as well. Barcelona have had 5 managers in the last 5 years. Sometimes when it's just not working, it's just not working. And I for the first time, I'm starting to worry about whether it's working, because United do not have the luxury of saying, we'll write this season off and we'll go for next season. Even if they do well in the Europa League, if they get sucked into what's going on at the bottom of the Premier League, that could be catastrophic for them. And I couldn't sit here. I want to sit here and say the easy thing. They're Man United, they're too good. Could I really do that? Is there a side that you would put your mortgage on? Don't put your mortgage on.
Everton, Ipswich, Leicester. In their next few games, Manchester United, there they are, Everton, Ipswich, Leicester in there. They've got teams that are.
It's hard to know where the wins are going to come from, though, because
I'm telling you now, they are not beating Everton for a start, right? They're not beating. Ipswich are well organised, disciplined, everything that Manchester United are not. Fulham, right? They play them at home. Now, at home, their home record is horrendous. The demand on them is to come out and play, and good teams who are well organised, and Fulham will be looking to get one over on United because they beat them at their place. They get into the space that they leave in behind, and they find those weaknesses in the United side that so many teams have been able to take advantage of. I do not look at that list and see 3 consecutive teams at Manchester.
Even Leicester really, to be fair, in the Cup, outplayed them. It worked for an offside goal from Harry Maguire a couple of weeks ago, which kind of bailed them out a little bit.
But the thing is, though, we can't keep sacking... Man United can't keep sacking the manager.
It
comes
down to why the manager's been appointed, doesn't it? So if the manager is there with the realisation that there's going to be a rebuild that will take 18 months...
Longer than that, Kel, I think, because based upon the players that Manchester United have are not good enough. How many of those Man United players would get in top 6 teams in the Premier League, apart from Bruno Fernandes?
No, but it's possible for a manager to go into a football club. You look at David Moyes. He's gone in there, and in 5 matches, he's got them playing good football, defending as a team, scoring goals from open play. If you're a good coach, you can have an instant impact on a group of players. They might not be your players. And as you rightly said, if you're... Listen... I have Liverpool sympathies. Thank goodness Amorim didn't go there, because I love principle. Yeah, you know me. I'm someone, I stand on principle.
You're a principled man.
Principled man, absolutely. Tune in next week. But sometimes you have to be a pragmatist. And under Van Nistelrooy, they played with a 4. They got a few results. They got the points that they needed to get. Amorim will not. He softened it a bit, but ultimately he will not change. Is that going to cost United?
He just, honestly, though, he doesn't... For me, I come from a place where I have to be optimistic to a certain degree, because this whole thing at Manchester United has been going on for so long. When Sir Jim Ratcliffe and Ineos took over, everybody was excited. That doesn't seem to be working out, to be honest.
Making more redundancies.
Exactly, and making ticket prices higher for the fans. But I think I come from a place now that it almost has to get worse to get better. That's my stance on it.
How much worse, Leanne? Because
it can't get any worse, Darren.
You can't get to the bottom. Exactly.
But it can't get any worse. But at the same time, the same thing Cristiano Ronaldo has said, same thing Jose Mourinho has said, is what's happening. When a Manchester United manager comes in, when Eric Ten Hag took over, the Harry Maguire situation was going on, the captaincy. I just want a manager to come in and be able to manage Manchester United Football Club
What do you think should happen? How do you arrest this slide? Because it is a slide. They can't win games. They can't keep clean sheets. They're falling down the table like a stone. What would you do? Would you keep him?
I would. I would keep him at least till the summer. Let him have a window of actually being able to spend. You've got like Rashford took so long to get out the door based upon his salary. Same with Mason Mount. They're on like 350 grand a week.
But if who else making these redundancies and pointing to PSR as one of the main reasons that they're doing them, is there going to be money for Manchester United to spend in the summer without selling players that now look as though they're not the players that Manchester United bought?
Yeah.
So there's It might be that there isn't.
That's the only optimism I have.
But it might be that.
It speaks to my concern. Listen, that is the case. That is the case. And Amorim on Friday spoke about the players being responsible. Again, I'm not sure how well advised he was to say it, but he talked about the players being responsible for the redundancies because they have no money. They're losing hundreds of millions of pounds hand over fist. So there is almost an arrogance about the fact that Man United could go to the summer and write this season off and bring in the players that are going to enable him to play the way that he wants to play. Where will Manchester United be by then? And that's not just a general sort of almost arbitrary suggestion that they're going to... Because it's a big thing to suggest.
And also as well, people always say, sorry, I know, a lot of people always talk about, Lam was saying there about players. It's not that easy to just get players out. Because there's going to be players, if I'm a player there sitting in the dressing room, you'd be the same. If I'm on a contract on £200,000 a week and I'm not getting that anywhere else, I'm not going absolutely nowhere. I will just sit there for 2 years and run my contract down. So that's the problem I think Amorim's going to have.
I mean, you guys can both speak better to this than me, but...
I wasn't on 200 grand a week.
No, me neither. I don't know how I put out there, but...
You talked about the bench yesterday. Man United can't afford to be shifting players out the door. The manager's job is to get players on side, not to be... And given that you don't have that goal-scoring capability, you don't have that organisation in defence, how is it that you can just casually... I mean, clearly you can't because of the expenditure, but... I just feel that Man United need a manager who's going to say, yes, I've got my principles, but I've got to make things work. I've got to make things work with the players I've got. I can't afford to see players go out the door and go to Betis and score goals like Anthony's doing, go to Villa like Rashford's doing. He's found a new lease of life.
I'm okay with those players. No, but I'm okay with those players going there, Darren, because Rashford's had enough time at Man United.
That's the point. Everyone says, oh, you've got to get him out the door because we're Manchester United and he's got to buckle. But actually... How are you doing now that he's left? He's all right. He's playing with a smile on his face again. You guys are in serious danger of being sucked into a really perilous position. So, again, it speaks to... Look, Man United, they've almost got this kind of... I keep saying arrogance, and maybe it's not a fair word, but there's this feeling that we are Man United, we're going to be all right. And actually, the house is burning.
No, I don't think we're going to be all right. I just have to have a little bit of optimism. Because I love the club so much.
Yeah. And that's it. You've got to have faith.
I'm going to leave now, guys. I didn't realise this show was going to be all about how bad we are. Can I go?
Responsible for this. Like I've taken Leanne to a place that we didn't want you to go.
Bye, everybody.
Continues to be very difficult for Ruben Amorim and Manchester United. That graphic shows you that only the bottom four and the team they beat today have had fewer points since he was appointed, Dion. And again, there was not a lot to get excited about if you're a Manchester United fan. In any aspect of their play today, was there? Really, they had a few chances, but there was nothing that really made you think that the future is particularly bright. That's what I'm getting at.
It was pretty toothless. Yeah. If you're watching that game, you're thinking, where's the potency coming from? Who's going to score the goals? Who's looking after the back four, the back three, whatever it was? Who's in charge? Who's taking charge of the midfield? I didn't see anybody really stepping up. And it's really frustrating. I know the injuries. Everybody's got injuries. Yeah, everybody's got an excuse for injuries. But like at the moment, there's enough good quality players in that side to do better than what they did today. I'm not saying win the game, but give me more in a Man United shirt. I didn't see it.
Mainu Nagati should be back this season. A few out for the season. Amad, which is a real blow because he has been their brightest spark up front, without a question. Luis Martinez as well out. But there, as I say, there's nothing really to hang your hat on from what you've seen to go, OK, that's the way... We can see that's the way that Amorim wants to play and it's beginning to take shape. It's not really, is it?
No.
No. Yeah. Thank you very much. You made back with that.
Well,
it is.
You know what?
Yeah.
It's bizarre because Dion touched on it before. Everybody's got injuries, right? So every team has got an excuse, so to speak, as to why they're not winning games necessarily on a consistent basis. But we're not seeing the best of these players that are currently playing. And the players that have left Manchester United in the January window, you look at Marcus Rashford, he played 45 minutes for Villa the other day, was a completely different Marcus to the one we've seen at Manchester United over the last 6, 12, 18 months maybe. Same with Anthony, he's played 4 games, he's won man of the match 3 times, got a few goals as well. So that makes you start questioning, not necessarily Amorim, but what's going on behind the scenes at Manchester United, at the training ground, around the place. Something's not right. There's no leaders in that team for me, in my opinion. I don't feel like we've seen players like Cristiano Ronaldo, for example.
Yeah.
He's the best player in the world in certain people's eyes. Why not get all of the young boys to learn from him? Watch what he does on a regular basis. Get that winning mentality back in the club. Bring Manchester United back to where they should be, and every single one of them don't seem like they're there.
It just feels like they need a rocket from somewhere.
Yes.
A rocket from a Paul Ince or a Roy Keane or a Brian Robson or someone like that to go, right, this is not good enough. You're wearing the Man United badge, it's not good enough.
There's a lot going on off the pitch, redundancies, club legends being let go.
And
does that have any impact at all in the sense of adding up and giving an impression of a club which has lost its way a little bit, lost its soul a little bit? Is that in any way reflected on the pitch? Should it be reflected on the pitch?
It shouldn't really reflect on the pitch, but if you've got, and I know there's more coming as well, there's a lot more coming as well, and I know a lot of people have lost their jobs, and while you're working in that environment, knowing that you're going to be leaving, you're going to be in and around the football, and you're chatting to the players, say, I'm leaving. What are you leaving for? So, you don't want it to make its way onto the training ground, but unfortunately it does. It shouldn't affect the players playing. But I don't know what's going on behind the scenes on the training ground.
So what does the rest of this season hold? I mean, they're still in the FA Cup, they're still in Europe as well, but it just feels like in the league, I mean, they're not going to go down, but they're just going to limp along in this manner. 2 wins in 9 games.
Wow. That's scary.
Yeah,
and we're talking
really
about
scary, whoever you are.
We're talking about Manchester United, like the rich history of Manchester United, the quality of the history of the club. Being, 10, 11, 12 points, I think it is, above the relegation zone after this many games. We're into the middle of February. This is bonkers. Yeah. Something needs to change drastically, but you look at the players that are due to come back, they're not attacking players. Who is it? It's
Ugarte and
the ones Kobe Mainoo.
Defensive
players.
Yeah.
Right.
Not going to change that end of the pitch. No, you're right.
They need to reinforce defensively, but to score goals, especially with the key players out, missing, on loan or injured, it doesn't look very good at all. And if some of the teams down at the bottom of the league start to pick up 1 or 2, get a couple of wins over the next couple of weeks, it will start putting a little bit more pressure on. And this is a position Manchester United haven't found themselves in since the early 70s, I think it is.
Oh, completely. No, absolutely. It's the worst Manchester United team since the one that got relegated in 1974. There's no question about that. Statistically, you can see that. For Tottenham, Ange Postecoglou, massive win. They really have had injuries. Everyone's had injuries, and then there's Tottenham, for whatever reason. So for them, having got out of the League Cup and the FA Cup in successive games, to win this game, Maddison back, scores, Brennan Johnson came on. He's getting a few players back. That's Sonny looked as though he was half back on it as well.
Yep. I mean, I don't think either side played well today.
No.
Spurs weren't great, and Man United weren't great. They gave the ball away too much. I mean, Maddison there, just being on it, just in case. We were speaking about this while the game was on.
Yeah.
Just go in and follow it in, just in case. As a defender, you do the same.
But they never do they?
Even more as a defender, you think, right, I cannot allow anybody to score here, so go in for the bits, just in case. And that's where United are at the moment. They're very much a reacting.
Yes. Yeah.
They're just reacting to what happens, and it's too late.
Rather than anticipating it happening.
It's amazing it happens. You must have scored so many goals like that.
Oh, yeah.
You're always... The minute the shot comes in, you're thinking, I'm ready, I'm following in for any rebound.
Absolutely.
And the central defenders are still thinking about the shot coming in.
As a striker, you get 5 goals, 6 goals, 7 goals a season just from anticipating the goalkeeper parrying the ball literally right in front of him. How many times have we seen that happen?
Yeah.
Maddison anticipated the goalkeeper parrying it right into his path, and what does he do? Easy tap in for his first goal in ages.
Big win for Ange Postecoglou.
Fantastic.
Absolutely.